Real estate scam happening coast to coast. Real estate agents putting your homes up for sale or rent without you even knowing about it. ABC's Gio Benitez tonight.
When the place you come home to becomes a war zone, it doesn't feel good.
Nobody gives two fucks about what's going on with your house. Nobody cares if you're sick. They don't care about any of that.
Don't buy that D.R. Horton house.
When we first bought the home 2 months later, our son's playroom was covered in mold.
This generation, this economy is cooked.
Everyone says buying a house is the best financial decision you'll ever make. Build equity. Stop throwing money away on rent. Create wealth. That's what we've been told for decades. But what if you never buy a house? Not next year, not in 5 years, never. Would you end up broke? Would retirement become impossible? Or is it possible that one of the biggest financial goals in America has quietly become optional? Because in 2026, millions of people are being priced out of homeownership. And for the first time in modern history, some financial experts are starting to ask a question that would have sounded crazy 20 years ago. What if buying a house isn't the automatic wealth-building machine everyone thinks it is? And before homeowners start typing angry comments, this isn't an argument against buying a house. Millions of people have built incredible wealth through real estate. The problem is that most people never stop to ask whether buying is actually the right move for them. They just assume it's the right move for everyone. That throwing money away on rent line everyone loves to repeat is based on a dangerous assumption. That every dollar you pay toward a mortgage is a dollar saved. But when you actually break down the numbers, homeownership has its own version of throwing money away. We just call it by different names. Take a typical $350,000 starter home in 2026. Your mortgage payment might be around $2,400 a month. On paper, that looks identical to renting a similar place for $2,400. But here's what they don't tell you about that mortgage payment.
I am closing on my house today. I'm selling my house and going back to an apartment. Guys, I've been in my apartment for like a week, and this is truly the best decision I've ever made. Like the maintenance, the yard work, the property taxes, like everything. I'm just so excited to be back in an apartment. If you want to sell your house, you should do it because I feel like a weight.
During the early years of a 30-year mortgage, most of your payment isn't building equity at all. It's going toward interest. Thousands of dollars every year flowing directly to the bank. Never to be seen again. It's rent. You're just paying it to a lender instead of a landlord. But that's only the beginning. Property taxes on that same home could easily add another $500 a month in many markets. That money disappears every single month. And unlike your mortgage payment, property taxes don't stay fixed. They can rise year after year as assessments and local tax rates increase. Then there's homeowners insurance. Insurance costs have exploded across much of the country over the last few years. That's another few $100s every month. And we haven't even talked about maintenance yet. Every homeowner eventually learns the same lesson. The house always wants more money. The water heater fails, the roof starts leaking, the air conditioner quits in the middle of summer. Financial planners often recommend budgeting between 1% and 3% of a home's value every year just for maintenance and repairs. For a $350,000 home, that's thousands of dollars annually that many buyers never factor into the original decision. When you add it all together, the true monthly cost of ownership can be dramatically higher than the mortgage payment itself. And that's the moment most people never calculate, because they compare a mortgage payment to rent, when they should be comparing rent to the total cost of ownership. The difference can be hundreds or even thousands of dollars every month. Then there are the transaction costs, closing costs when you buy, agent commissions when you sell, moving expenses, repairs before listing. The costs start piling up long before you ever see a profit. Suddenly the financial picture looks a lot more complicated than the simple advice we've all heard our entire lives. Buy a house, build wealth, repeat. But once you account for all of these hidden costs, a much bigger question starts to emerge. What happens if you take that extra money and invest it instead? Because the real advantage of renting isn't necessarily cheaper housing. It's what that lower monthly cost allows you to do with the difference. And when you run those numbers over 20 or 30 years, the results surprise almost everyone. But here's where the math starts getting really interesting. Most people stop the calculation right there. They see the homeowner building equity and assume the homeowner automatically wins. But what if the renter takes every dollar they're saving and invests it instead? Not for a year, Not for 5 years, for decades, because this is where the conversation changes. We're no longer asking whether renting is cheaper, we're asking which path builds more wealth over time. And when you run those numbers over 20 or 30 years, the outcome isn't what most people expect.
All of the down payment money for our house, and that was about $255,000. And so our nest egg, our savings, everything at that moment was gone.
It's happening, unfortunately, every single day.
Let's look at a simple example. Imagine two people. Both are 30 years old. Both earn the same income. Both have similar spending habits. The only difference is what they do with their housing costs. The first person buys a house. The second person rents and invests the difference. 30 years later, the homeowner owns a paid-off property. That's a major financial achievement. They no longer have a mortgage payment. And depending on the market, that home could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars more than they originally paid. But the renter hasn't been standing still. Every month, they've been investing the money that would have gone toward higher ownership costs. Month after month, year after year, decade after decade. Thanks to compound growth, those investments can grow into a portfolio worth hundreds of thousands, or even millions of dollars. And that's where most people get surprised, because both people may have become wealthy. They just arrived there using different paths. One built wealth primarily through home equity, the other built wealth primarily through investments. Neither strategy is guaranteed to win every time. A lot depends on local housing prices, interest rates, investment returns, how long you stay in one place, and whether you actually invest the difference instead of spending it. That's why there isn't a universal answer. The question isn't whether renting beats buying. The question is whether your housing decision supports the life you're trying to build. But here's where the conversation gets more interesting. The advantage isn't always about investment returns. Sometimes it's about flexibility. When you rent, you can move for a better job opportunity without worrying about selling a house in a difficult market. You can relocate to a lower cost of living area and keep more of your income. You can pursue opportunities across the country without being tied to a specific property. Homeownership provides stability, but that stability can sometimes reduce flexibility. Meanwhile, the renter who's been investing consistently for decades has built a portfolio that moves with them. No matter where they live, their investments go with them. And here's what retirement could look like for a lifelong renter who invested wisely. Instead of having much of their wealth concentrated in a single property, they may have a diversified investment portfolio worth over $1 million. They can choose where they want to live. They can downsize their housing costs without needing to sell a home. And if they need additional income, they can gradually withdraw from their investments. The homeowner often has a different advantage. They may enter retirement with a paid-off home and significantly lower monthly housing expenses. There's another factor most people ignore: time. A house usually makes the most financial sense when you stay put for a long time. 5 years? 10 years? Maybe longer. But if you're moving every few years for work, family, or lifestyle changes, those transaction costs can eat away at a surprising amount of your gains. The longer you stay in a home, the more time you have to spread those costs out. The shorter you stay, the harder it becomes for the math to work in your favor. That's one reason the answer is so personal. The same decision that creates wealth for one family can become an expensive mistake for another. That's why this debate is much more complicated than most people think. The real danger isn't renting forever. The real danger is failing to invest consistently, whether you own or rent. A homeowner who never invests outside their home may become overly dependent on a single asset. A renter who spends every dollar they save instead of investing it will likely end up in the same position. The key is understanding that housing and investing are two separate decisions. You can rent and build substantial wealth. You can own and build substantial wealth. But neither happens automatically, because in 2026, buying a house is no longer the automatic wealth-building machine many people assume it is. It can still be an incredible financial decision, but only when the numbers actually work. The real lesson isn't that renting is better, and it isn't that buying is better. The real lesson is that wealth comes from what you own, not where you live. A house can help build wealth. Investments can help build wealth. The mistake is assuming one automatically creates the other. So if you've been feeling pressured to buy a home because everyone says it's the only path to financial success, maybe the better question is whether buying a house actually fits your financial situation. Because the most expensive financial mistakes usually happen when people follow advice that worked for someone else. If you found this video valuable, subscribe to Worth It Finance. Because every week we break down the financial decisions people are told to make and whether they're actually worth it.